Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later because just look at this thing. Yes, it's true, Optimus Prime is back, and this time he's more powerful than ever. So what we have here is the new Retro G1 reissue Optimus Prime. Not the missing link, not the legacy G1 Universe toy, it's the original, the OG, the one that started it all, here in a new colour scheme, and I couldn't be more excited. But if you're still feeling some confusion about exactly what this release represents, then have no fear, we'll be doing plenty of comparisons today. I'm fairly sure that by the end of this video you'll be pretty clued up on it. As for me, I couldn't be more excited. I love this toy so much, and any opportunity to get it in a brand new colour scheme is just perfect. Now I should mention before we kick off that this video is brought to you by TF Source, so I'll put a link to their site down in the description below and you can check them out for all your Transformers needs. Now for my part, I can't tell you what a genuine thrill it is to see a vintage Optimus Prime done in a new colour scheme and presented in what appears to be a very close approximation of the original box. I love it. I mean, if pictures could speak 1,000 words, just look at these two together. Honestly, that is beautiful. On top you've got my original 1984 Optimus, looking, slightly worse for wear, but still very, very treasured. I absolutely love seeing this thing in the box. So it's, as I say, a genuine thrill to see this updated take on it all. Dream come true, really, what can I say? Now the keen-eyed of you will have noticed that the art has been updated already to reflect the changes that have been made to this, because it's been done in a cartoon style, and it's quite strange to see, but it does look good. I even love stuff like how they've recreated this product photography on the top here. It's a real love letter to the original. Coming round to the back, it's more of the same. Again, it all looks so on point, so close to what we saw all those years ago. I'm really quite speechless with it. It's familiar, but it's just a real thrill to get something like this new in 2024, honestly. But whilst it might look old in terms of the contents, it's actually all new, so I can't wait to check it out. So let's go ahead and see exactly what we've got going on here today. Bit different to not see the classic polystyrene, but honestly, I don't mind that. It's a bit more eco-friendly in this case, isn't it? So that's probably a good thing. Oh yeah, we rolling, baby. We're rolling. Now, speaking of which, of course, you don't want to forget his little buddy here as well. And then you've got stuff like this, which is a baggie of very familiar looking accessories as well. But before all of that, can we take a moment to acknowledge how awesome this is? I mean, what a sight. I don't think I'll ever tire of seeing this classic vintage vehicle mode at all. It's just breathtaking to me, even after all of these years. I love it no matter the colour scheme that it's presented in, but even in the kind of original or sort of more traditional red and blues, this is just awesome. And of course it has had a little bit of a makeover here. I mean, the red is definitely more saturated on the cab. First thing out the box, you can see that immediately, and the blue as well, so we'll take a look at all of those kind of colour differences and do some comparisons upcoming. You've got stuff like the white bumper here, which immediately catches the eye, and of course the trailer, which there's a lot to say about that. I mean, one thing I do want to point out about this trailer is that it's actually a new mould, and this is really exciting because it kind of, if anything, opens the door a little bit, kind of sticks the foot in the door of potentially further newly tooled reissues of classic Generation 1 toys happening. This is really the first instance in the modern era that we've seen of this. It has happened before, believe it or not, but this is, in terms of modern reissues, kind of current day reissues, this is definitely a very exciting development because the cab is the existing mould, it's the classic mould that we've been seeing since 1984, but the trailer section is entirely newly done by Hasbro, commissioned exactly for this release, and that's why this, the Optimus Prime toy didn't have the trailer on the recent Walmart reissue. And it's hilarious because it really does look like the original thing in every regard. I mean, again, I'll do a comparison in a moment, but certainly based on first impressions, it may as well be that original mould. It's entirely indistinct from it, from what I can see on a cursory glance anyway. Now, there has been a lot of talk about the screw holes just here on the side, and a lot of people saying, well, if they're going to newly tool this thing, why not get rid of those or kind of fill them in or something like that? For me personally, I'm so glad that they didn't. I mean, those screw holes were always there on the mould, just, under the sticker that's on the kind of traditional vintage version. I'm happy they didn't, honestly. I think that it's great that they've recreated it one for one, kind of preserved that history, as it were. I'm kind of big into that kind of thing. And I think, go back and make a few improvements. It's not like it hasn't happened in the past. There have been tweaks to these molds. But this, I don't know, to me, there's something pure about just keeping those little imperfections in a weird way, Besides, I can honestly say that does not bother me in the least. Visually, it's such a non-problem in hand. Like, it's a very tiny area. Like, you can see it, obviously. Like, I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but it's really not a deal breaker for me. It definitely doesn't detract that much at all from the overall visual appeal of everything else going on here. And hey, if it is a deal breaker for you, then maybe just pose it on this side, you know, put this side visually facing outwards from your shelf or something, because it's only got the one screw hole at least. I also know some folks are going to miss the blue stripe down the side that again is more, you know, kind of the more classic version. Again, it doesn't bother me. I like that this is different. I like it when they do new stuff with it. And yes, it's very grey. That is just the kind of cartoon look, so it's to be expected, I suppose. And, you know, other people are maybe going to kind of quibble the trailer being in here at all. People are like, do I need another grey box and things like that? I understand that. I get where people are coming from. For me, it's such an intrinsic part of this vehicle form that honestly, if it wasn't here, I'd be sad. I would miss it. I want it here, personally. And just by way of comparison, so if you're not familiar with that original mould, you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. I mean, they really are identical, you know, in every regard, apart from the kind of styling of it. Again, this is missing the sticker down the side, but the moulded detail, everything else just here, really does look the same. This is kind of a flatter grey plastic, if anything. It doesn't have some of the swirls and things that the other version does have, but yeah, it's fascinating to see them together, honestly. It's a similar story when you look at the two cab sections up close as well. I mean, again, the red is very obviously different straight out the box, and you've got that lack of chrome and things like this, which is now very typical of the retro reissues from Hasbro. Again, I'm sure some people are going to have something to say about that, but it doesn't bother me personally. It's a different thing, and I welcome that. But yeah, honestly, seeing them side by side, there's a lot to take in here. It really feels very different. I mean, just look at that gorgeous blue on the bottom of the trailer there. That is really lovely. Very striking in terms of the way it catches the light. And it totally brings this thing, to life. It gives it a very different feel overall. I mean, let's go ahead and check out the trailer in more detail. You can fold these bits out at the side, and that just allows us to stand the trailer like so, and then you can flip the back door down. I mean, the action on that actually is really interesting because it's got this kind of smoothness to the way it all fits together and glides. It's I don't know, it feels very different to the vintage version, which often I found with the trailer door required quite a bit of force, even on reissues and things like that. And I think, yeah, that is amazing. It's the same here with the way that the top of these sections folds down. It just unclips beautifully. Like, you can actually tell that this is a new toy, a new mold. It has that feel of it, not in a bad way, in a really, really good way. It's like the thing should feel when it's new, not like something that's been reissued however many countless times over. And it just works. Beautiful. Now, one thing that is going to come as a surprise to many people when they open this is how plain it looks here. And you know what? I'm going to be completely honest. I had a moment where I was like, oh, okay, I guess you have to apply the decals, to kind of these sections just here. And it's just dawned on me, of course, that there are no decals to apply because this is the retro reissue. So it's got that very pared down, clean cartoon look. So this is it, basically. This is the finished thing, which, again, people are going to have something to say about because it really does look like a little bit nondescript without all of that kind of iconic detail and things like that. And I guess that's where stuff like your missing link comes in and things like this, but it's definitely a different look, I gotta tell you. I mean, you've still got the classic combat deck command module thing here, which just kind of folds up like so. This little arm just comes out there, it's articulated. It's got a little radar dish which moves around, so that's cool. And, so there is plenty to kind of admire about this all the same. And again, that blue looks wonderful, really nice kind of very dark blue translucent kind of cockpit section just here as well. It looks gorgeous. It's just, without the decals and everything, it's a lot plainer than people are going to kind of remember it, if you grew up with this toy. Now, of course, if you flip up this little windshield section just there, then that just opens rather nicely. Now, in theory, you should be able to fit a vintage Diaclone driver in here. If you just happen to have one lying around, like I do, then it should just go in here, like on the classic version. That's what it was designed to do back in the early 80s, pre-Transformers. Weirdly, it doesn't fit. It's I don't know, the moulding inside here doesn't allow for the feet to go all the way in as it does on the classic version. And so now it kind of sits at a weird angle, and the cockpit will not close. That is so strange to see. Like, I'm really surprised by that, because until now, you know, I hadn't perceived that there was any real difference between the two. You know, this retool, essentially this new tooling, and the old one. I mean, will it work with? Yeah, it will, with a new Diaclone driver. So if you are a fan of the Diaclone reboot, then that will fit in quite nicely, actually. So maybe that's why they've done it. You know, just to make it work with the reboot toys better. Perhaps a strange choice. Like, I think that maybe is a little bit of a, I don't want to say an oversight, but certainly a weird choice, but it is what it is. I mean, just to prove I'm not going completely mad, here you have, again, that reissue, and there you go. There's your classic Diaclone pilot fitting in quite nicely in there. So, you know, it definitely does fit on the vintage versions. And if you were to put the new Diaclone pilot in, he's actually a little bit loose in there, like he kind of sags down and gets lost, like, you've got to kind of dig him out. So I do wonder if that was an intentional change made, actually, in order that it works with the kind of new Diaclone, Diaclone reboot pilots better than the vintage ones. Anyway, there's plenty of other fun to be had here if you've never seen this thing. It's very articulated, it swivels around, up and down, you know, this kind of neck section here is articulated. This claw comes all the way up and over, like so, and then the little claw itself kind of opens. So, you know, there's a lot going on with this. It retains its play value even after all these years. There are still the little computer consoles on the inside of the trailer as well, and I'm pleased to report that a Diaclone driver will sit nicely in there, and the same is true on this side as well. Or you can go ahead and grab those missiles from the sprues, so just twist those off gently, like so, and then they mount in these little missile launcher sections just here. Now, I will say that this is slightly newly tooled as well, because there's a little kind of rivet just there to make them fit one orientation, so they have to go that way up specifically, whereas on the old ones these were spring loaded. It's just not really something you get on toys nowadays, and they could be fired out, but they were also just completely cylindrical, so that they could fit in kind of any which way and, you know, be rotated round. So a little bit of a change there. And here you can see a side-by-side comparison with the vintage original. I'm sure I don't need to point out which is which, because they do look very different, obviously, in terms of style, but it's genuinely interesting to see. Like, again, I can't believe that they've retooled this thing, or newly tooled it, I should say. It's absolutely fascinating to me. And in terms of, it's exciting, obviously, in terms of this trailer, but in terms of what it represents, you know, the window into the future of all the lost molds, all the damaged molds from years gone by that could now be resurrected through this exact process. This is as a statement of intent goes, this is really something. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I know someone is going to be like, how excited can I be about like a grey box or whatever. To me, this is hugely exciting. Again, because of what it represents, you know, because of what it could mean. And because it's just a great toy to begin with, frankly. Anyway, it is worth me also pointing out that this is actually a different mold to the Missing Link, newly created Missing Link toy that's also come out this year. And a lot of people have been like, oh, maybe they share parts and things like this. And the way that you know that they haven't, for sure, other than that we've been told that by Evan from Hasbro on Triple Takeover, so I'm sure we can take his word for it. But the way that there is kind of some proof of that is this launcher here, which is a gimmick that wasn't present on the Missing Link toy, but it does mean that with this one, you can go ahead and put your roller in, just like that, like he slots in, you pull the launcher back and then slot him in there. And then you come around to the reverse and you've got this little button just here, and there he goes. Now, it might seem silly, but it is kind of surprising to see them bring that back, especially considering it was absent from the Missing Link release. So, you know, total props from me. Big points there in terms of restoring that gimmick, because yeah, it's a little bit silly, it's a bit of fun, whatever, but it's also so memorable from the original version of this toy, and love to see it. Obviously, roller here presented in the kind of silvery grey of the cartoon and not the dark blue of the original toy, but, as to be expected, but you can go ahead and put a little Diaclone pilot in roller as well, so that's a lot of fun to see. And for completeness sake, they've even included this little hose accessory, which kind of tabs onto the back just there as well. It's this kind of little pliable hose that sits on the back of roller. This was something I never really bothered with as a kid, I must admit, but it is in there, so if it's something that you really, really desire to see, then you'll find it included in the box, which is neat. Alternatively, you can load roller up with Prime's rifle, like so, and that actually makes him look a little bit more ready for combat. Or there is this rather neat little bit of weapon storage just at the back there, where the blaster kind of slots into that peg, and then it just sits there ready for the trailer to be closed up. Alternatively, you've still got that little hole in the roof, so if you do close up the sides of the trailer, then it will do so around the combat deck module just there, so it can stick out the top. Or you can actually bring it down like so, and then it will stick out the front as well if you just kind of line it up and get the sides closed up. Then there you go, kind of sticks out the front, and a bit of a strange look, but kind of fun nonetheless. But yes, all told, this is a really fascinating experience to me, just because I remember this toy so vividly from childhood. I had a second-hand copy that was bought for me by my mum, and I don't know, it's so vivid, such a vivid memory, and seeing it now recreated in this form, it's weird. Like, I don't know, it just works so well. It just all fits together beautifully. And as I said earlier, it just kind of glides and works purposely in a way that, like, even a vintage reissue now would not do. It's something. Anyway, turning our attention to the cab, which, you know, we're going to spend a bit of time on. Just beautiful to see. Again, this lighter blue is so nice, honestly, like a real contrast to the darker blue just there. Paint on the back here and in the areas that you can see it already looks really good. I'm sure some people are going to be, you know, missing the kind of chrome of the smokestacks and these little sections down here, like on the wheels and things as well, but in my opinion, it looks really, really solid, honestly. Still got the rubber tyres, like they are a slightly harder rubber than some of the previous versions, but they're still rubber, definitely. So that's really welcome to see. And it does have the die-cast up the front for anybody worried about that. I've seen a lot of people talking about these retro reissues saying, oh, well, of course they don't have the die-cast of the classic toys, and yeah, they do. No rub sign though, like you see here on the original, so there's just kind of a little hole there now, which, again, you know, I'm sure somebody will take umbrage with, but hey-ho, it is what it is. Overall, I think this is a very favourable comparison. It's different to the original, sure, but I like that. That's exactly what I signed up for in this regard. Definitely a different look with this white paint down the front, particularly these yellow highlights. That really sets it off nicely. You've got the silver just there. Of course, you've got the blue tinted windows. That's not the first time we've seen that done, but it is still a contrast to the kind of classic look of the vintage toy, so that's really nice. Come around to the side, you've got that white outline Autobot logo, which does look very different to the kind of classic look, which is typically like a Tampo or a decal, or even the original had a decal, which didn't sit very well on this kind of bumpy molded detail, but you know, this looks really, really nice, and all of that detail is present here as well, of course, from the kind of classic mold, and yeah, it's just beautiful, honestly, lovely. Equally, I'm sure someone will mention the half stripe here in vehicle mode, the silver stripe, because in the cartoon model anyway, Optimus has the stripe in his robot mode, but not in vehicle mode, so it would kind of have to disappear, if anything. And obviously we've had many Masterpiece toys and other toys now that all kind of, you know, go to great pains, let's say, impressive engineering to kind of solve this problem. And here what they've done is just taken the stripe off this little bit at the back and then included it at the front, which I understand because you want to prioritize the cartoon accuracy for the robot mode in many regards, but I do feel that, like, it does look a little bit weird here, I'm not going to lie. It's not too bad though, honestly. Anyway, to do a few more comparisons, here you can see it in the middle, next to the Takara Tomy New Year Special reissue from 2002, just here. This was really kind of the first attempt to cartoonify the classic G1 Optimus Prime mold, so it's got blue tinted windows and things like this, and a few other changes that we'll see in the robot mode. And then here you have the recent Takara Tomy Missing Link 2024 release. And again, it's the anime version, so you know, it actually doesn't have sort of as strong blue tinted windows, but it does have other kind of cartoony features. So just so you can really see the three of them all together. But there's no doubt in my mind that this one, the retro, stands up already as the most cartoony in a way, like it's the one that really screams toon. Well, in case you were wondering, yes, this toy does of course retain its original gimmick, where you can fold that down and put one of those little Diaclone pilots, drivers, whatever you want to call them, in the little cab section there as well, and fold that up. So, I mean, that just remains as fun as ever. Should stress that this driver isn't included with this release. I keep showing it off. It is just one that I happen to have hanging around, but still a lot of fun. So yeah, all told, I'm in love with this thing so far. I gotta tell you, I'm just blown away by how nice it looks. It's just gorgeous. It's so amazing to see this toy given new life again after all these years. And yeah, it's another Optimus Prime, and yeah, you know, I already own I don't know how many versions of this mold, or you know, whichever version. You know, it's Missing Link as well. Who cares? I love it. I love it. Anyway, let's go ahead and check out Transformation. And do you know what? Although this is so familiar to me, it feels so strange. I can't really explain it. Like, whether it's on the legs or the arms, like here, it's just so fluid. It all flows so nicely. That's got such a lovely click of the arms as well. It feels very new. I can't... It's the springs, everything. It's such a weird time of handling it. I don't know, just after so many reissues of this thing and so many recolors and whatever else, dare I say this one feels the most fluid? I mean, again, I should stress that this is the vintage mould. It's not a new tooling like the trailer, but it feels new. Anyway, of course, we've got to go ahead and put the fists in, like so. There's none of your fancy, newfangled missing link integration here, just old school parts forming. At which point you want to equip him with his blaster, like so. Although that is a little bit new because it fits much better in the hand than the original versions did. They always had to be kind of, off at a slight angle, but this fits beautifully. And there we go. And it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love it. I really love it. Someone is inevitably going to compare it to Missing Link and say, isn't this kind of redundant now? You know, we have this new mold that's got all this articulation and bells and whistles. And you know, if you've seen my video on that thing, you know I love Missing Link, but this absolutely has its place too, in my opinion. I mean, just the original transformation being perfected in the way that it has. It's a real experience for me. Honestly, there's a simplicity to it, just an ingenuity to it that lasts all these years. Even 40 years on, it's still remarkable how satisfying it is, just in its simplicity, literally. And, you know, the Missing Link does many clever things to kind of enhance it, I suppose is the right word, but there's still something to be said for this original, straightforward transformation. You know, parts forming fists and all. I mean, it also helps, of course, that this guy has really looked better. Honestly, the paint is superb. Really love the blue eyes and everything on the face just there. The grey is superb. This red is gorgeous and absolutely sets this mould off to its best. Like, it's just so vibrant. Really nice. You know, all the little touches like it's not chrome, but the silver just here is beautiful. The white. It looks stunning. And look, of course, I'm not going to do a comparison of this thing's articulation versus Missing Link because there's no doubt that the modern mold takes it in that regard. Of course it does. But that's not the point of this original toy, and it's not the point of this reissue at all. It's a little bit beyond that. Yes, the G1 toys are bricks, but there's a charm here that is just so palpable, in my opinion. Instead, I will again big up the kind of fluidity of these joints. I mean, just that little movement there. It's got this kind of springy action to it, this kind of give in the joints that is really noticeable, honestly. And again, when you compare it to the kind of rigidity or the lack of flexibility in a lot of the vintage versions, whether it's the original toy, the 1984 toy itself, or any of the reissues, that is just so noticeable. Or indeed the way that the whole thing folds around to the back and folds out again. It's got this ease to it, honestly, this grace that that movement on even a vintage reissue, even on one of the more modern reissues, I'm worried to do it because of how rigid it is. And here it's just so easy, honestly. Like, it's no exaggeration to say that I'm genuinely in love with this thing. And, you know, people were saying, what's the point of this reissue when it was announced? I couldn't love it more. And here you can see him with some of the retro reissue Autobots that we've had so far, and I couldn't be enjoying this line more if I tried, to be honest. Between this and Missing Link, I'm just sated. Absolutely so happy with the kind of current focus on the G1 toys and kind of bringing them back to life. I mean, Hot Rod was a dream come true, we know this. All of these have been delightful so far. Prime is absolutely no exception in that regard, and if anything, is way more interesting than I ever thought it possibly could be, you know? Just brilliant so far. And here he is with the Decepticon crew so far, barring a few cassettes anyway, and it just looks so good. And again, just makes me intrigued about what we're going to see next. We know that Bombshell is on the way now, and that's really good news, but, you know, again, with the trailer being a newly tooled version of the old mold, it just really opens the doors to what else might be next. I very much doubt we're going to see a Megatron before anybody starts speculating, but, you know, beyond that, barring licensing issues anyway, it feels like the possibilities could be endless. I mean, I would really strongly recommend listening to the Triple Takeover podcast chat that we do with Evan Brooks, the designer that's brought this latest reissue to life. You know, I'm going to link to that down below, but he talks in detail about this toy, specifically this version, and kind of what went into it, the new tooling for the trailer, and all of that kind of good stuff. And just fascinating to think about where it might lead, as I say. For today anyway, here's a quick comparison with the original version, and again this is the 2000 Takara reissue, but still you can see what it looks like stacked up next to the kind of traditional toy style version of this mould. And yeah, very, very different overall. The blue is noticeably brighter, the red in hand is much more obviously brighter, no chrome and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously it's got blue eyes now, doesn't have the decals, but it does have additional paint detailing, things like that, like on the toes. So, and you know, the little bits on the wrists as well. Very different, very, very different, but extraordinarily worthwhile in my opinion. And then here we can see him with two other cartoony styled versions of Optimus Prime, the kind of original look anyway. So on the left again we've got that New Year special reissue from 2002 with the blue tinted windows. You can see it's got blue eyes as well, but again, you know, with the much darker blue and even darker red as well actually. Now I haven't applied decals to this, I never did, because I always kind of wanted to go for that kind of cleaner look that felt a little bit more accurate, but you can see how different the paint and everything makes the new retro reissue in that regard. And then on the right we've got the Missing Link anime. This is the C02 release, and again, you know, even though that is supposed to be a kind of anime look, it's very different to the retro. You know, the blue is lighter than the original, but not as light as the retro, and the red is lighter but not as light as the retro, you know, and so on and so forth. It's still got the chrome, but it does have the blue eyes, it does have the grey faceplate, so choices, I guess. You know, do you want the kind of super articulated Missing Link version, or do you want the retro reissue of the original thing? You know, it's there's no right or wrong, and for my money they're both great. And hey, if you do have both, then you can put the Missing Link C02 toy with the retro trailer, and actually that does work as well. So, you know, considering that that Missing Link repaint didn't come with a trailer, this could be a good option for people. And then for a bit of fun, you can also see him here with the Generation 2 Optimus Prime release on the left from the mid-90s, and I can't even tell you how different that feels in hand now. I mean, that is one of the earliest re-releases of this mould, by like the Gold Box Classics version from just a year or two prior. And, you know, again, the new one feels so nicely put together. The old one, it's a very mint copy of the toy, but it still feels quite awkward to handle and like you've got to have kid gloves about you. So there's a lot to be said for this reissue, honestly. And then on the right, you've got the Pepsi reissue, not the classic one, but the more recent Takara Tomy effort. And yeah, it's just interesting to kind of compare the blues and things like this. Actually, the Generation 2 toy does have a lighter blue and a slightly more saturated red as well, and it's not that far off in colour to the new retro release. And it's a similar story with the Pepsi one, actually, on the blue. Both of them have lighter tones than the kind of classic G1 Optimus, and it fits surprisingly well, these three. Like, I don't know why they do, but it works weirdly well. Anyway, at the risk of repeating myself, it's lovely. It's bloody lovely. Like, what are you waiting for? Go and track it down if you can, because, you know, if you're at all a fan of this toy, it's fascinating to look at. If you've never handled it before, you owe it to yourself to do so at least once, and this is a great version for it. I'm absolutely in love with it. I'm so fascinated by the fact that they've done it, and they've done it so well, that they've polished it off so nicely. I've got nothing but good things to say about this release. This is what I enjoy about being a Transformers fan, even after all these decades. It's a total, unequivocal, absolutely unashamed toot. Now again, you'll find a link to TF Source's site in the description below, so you should go and check them out for all your Transformers and third-party needs. Otherwise, that's it from me, so thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day. TTFN.